So if you are taking time to this Knapp seminar, you are welcome to this Knapp seminar, 2019 Knapp seminar. And so my name is J. Jayaratna. I am from North Carolina State University. And so I had the opportunity to work with great committed individuals in Extension 6 last year until this moment. And so if you are a member of Extension 6, at this time, could you please stand up? Yeah, if you are a 6 member, please stand up. And Michael, Rhetoric, please stand up. And these individuals actually contributed to plan this Knapp seminar. Let us give them a round of applause. So this year we have a great speaker for Knapp seminar, and I would like to invite Dr. Michael Rhetoric to introduce our 2019 Knapp seminar speaker. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. As the host institution, the committee reached out to me and asked for some potential leaders and names that would serve as a great speaker for the Knapp seminar. We kind of brainstormed and provided a quick list, and it was within a matter of minutes that I got a response back that says, we know who we want. And can you go reach out to Dr. Wintersteen, president of Iowa State, to see if she would be willing to speak. So it was quite an honor and pretty exciting for the group and myself when President Wintersteen actually accepted our invitation. And they've asked me to kind of introduce her, so I'll do that briefly so she can move on with the remarks. But President Wintersteen's roots are deep here in the Midwest. She grew up in Kansas and received her bachelor's degree from Kansas State in crop protection. And we got some wildcats here. I'm sure they didn't. I'm surprised they didn't holler. There you go. She immediately joined Iowa State University's Extension Service, working with farmers in eastern Iowa on integrated pest management. She simultaneously pursued her PhD in entomology at Iowa State and then was appointed to the faculty in that department. In 2000, she was named the director of the College Extension Programs. And 2 years later, she was appointed Senior Associate Dean and Associate Director of the Iowa Agriculture and Home Economics Research Station. In 2006, President Wintersteen was actually appointed Dean of the College of Ag and Life Sciences and became the first endowed Dean at Iowa State. After 11 years as Dean, she was appointed President in October of 2017, becoming the first President to take office at Iowa State. Dr. Wintersteen is an influential and impactful leader, and as can be attested by her bio in the program. I could go on about her work and her recognition across the state and internationally, but I think you'd like to hear from her instead of me. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce President Wendy Wintersteen, the 16th President of Iowa State, here to present the Knapp lecture entitled Thinking Differently, the Hybrid Extension Educator of the Future. So please help me welcome President Wintersteen.
It's such a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to present this presentation, the Knapp seminar today. As I was listening to Mike's introduction of myself, I have to sit and smile and remember some of the conversations with colleagues from around the nation. And I was very proud when I was named the first endowed dean at Iowa State University. It was from a friend of the college and the university that wished to remain anonymous, so it doesn't have a name associated with it. And I would joke with the dean at that time from Purdue. Randy Woodson was the dean of ag at Purdue, and he was the sample dean. He had an endowed position. And he joked that he would be out and about and be introduced as a sample dean, and invariably somebody in the audience would say, well, when will the real dean? So you have a lot of fun with some of these names and some of these memories. So I've been at Iowa State my entire career. I started in 1979, and I worked my way up the ranks to be the president of the university, the first female president at Iowa State. it's really an extraordinary story of how if you're willing to accept opportunities that are given to you, you can truly move forward and have experiences that you never thought you would back where you were an undergraduate at Kansas State University. So prior to becoming president, I was dean for 11 years, and prior to that, director for Ag and Natural Resources Extension. These were important experiences for me as an individual and for really understanding what my job is today as president. It's also nice to be here for the Seaman Knapp seminar, because Seaman Knapp was the first dean of the College of Agriculture at Iowa State University. And so all those years that I served in the college, I would be in the dean's conference room, and there above me on the wall would be the portrait of Seaman Knapp, staring down, gazing down at all of us, the first dean of the College of Agriculture at Iowa State University. I knew a lot about Seaman Knapp because of his service as dean. I knew that when he came into that role, he found a college that was in somewhat of a disrepair, that facilities had to be repaired, that he had to work hard to have the resources needed to build up that college. And what he knew as he revitalized the work of the college, he knew that the practical experiences that students could gain from work was really going to be at the heart of what would be the College of Agriculture at Iowa State University. He carried out extensive research in animal husbandry, in issues related to the dairy industry and in farm crops, and he became known as the founder of farm demonstration work because of what he did at Iowa State University while he served as dean of the college. So as I prepared for this presentation today, I decided I should read a little bit about what was his service like as president at Iowa State College. That was our name back then, Iowa State College. So he was appointed as the second president of the college in 1883, after serving 3 years as dean of the College of Agriculture, but he only lasted a year. And I really didn't know that until I started doing some background reading. And why did he only last a year? And again, you have to think, this is 1883, the second president at Iowa State University. And I think you'll enjoy knowing that he only lasted a year because he was struggling with declining enrollment and lack of state support. Does that sound familiar? So it's kind of the history of some of our great public land-grant universities from the very beginning, the struggles that we've had. And so he decided after a little more than a year that he was going to move on and do some other things. And you can read about that in your materials and the information about the Knapp seminar. So he went on to do extraordinary things. He played key roles in establishing the experiment station and the extension service system nationally. His name is on an arch that connects the north and south buildings of the USDA. Seaman Knapp made a tremendous difference in the nation and the world because of the work that he led and the teams that he built. And you'd be also interested, I think, to know that he's buried alongside his wife in the Iowa State University Cemetery. And so Seaman Knapp has a special place in my heart, and I am very honored to be one of the presidents, along with Seaman Knapp, at Iowa State University. Well, a moment ago we joked about declining enrollments and lack of state support, and those are certainly two of my serious challenges at Iowa State University right now. And I think they are challenges across the nation in our great land-grant universities. And so it's something that we all work with, that we all face, that we all find a way forward, a path forward. Before we started, I joked with Mike that throughout my career, I've never been in a position where I had a lot of money. And so you get used to finding what are the ways to be creative in your position so that you can still achieve great success for the university and for your state. Well, as president, I have two goals that I want to share with you. I have many goals, actually, that relate to our research, teaching, and extension programs and what we do in the state. But I want to share just two goals that I think will change Iowa State forever. And the first goal is that Iowa State University will be the most, we will be the university, the land-grant university that is most successful in having a welcoming and inclusive environment. This is a critical issue for all of us, and that's my aspirational goal for Iowa State. And when I'm out and about talking with students or faculty or staff, I'm talking to them about this goal of having Iowa State be known as the best land-grant university in terms of offering a welcoming and inclusive environment. This is an important goal for Iowa State University. My second goal is that we are going to grow our culture of innovation and entrepreneurship at Iowa State. So when we think about innovation and entrepreneurship, Iowa State has excelled about this forever. We had the first electronic digital computer developed at Iowa State by Adanasoff and Berry from 42 to 47. A decision was made at that time not to patent that invention. And I always say, can you imagine the possibilities if we had patented the first electronic digital computer at Iowa State? We would have Silicon Valley in the Midwest instead of on the West Coast. So we have a great history of innovation and entrepreneurship. Today, our students are engaged in all sorts of opportunities related to entrepreneurship. And I'll just share one quick story. I went over to a class in our engineering department, engineering college, and one of the student teams there had decided that a big issue for consumers is that oftentimes craft beer is not served at the correct temperature. Is this a big problem for any of you? I didn't even know there was an issue on temperature. I thought, you just put it in the refrigerator. No, it's supposed to, different beers are supposed to be served at different temperatures. So these two young men in this class developed a little prototype that you put your growler, you know what a growler is? Okay, on top of, and the beer goes through it, and it comes out at the temperature that has been selected for that particular craft beer. So everywhere these students go with their prototype, somebody wants to buy it. So they must have met some kind of consumer demand here. They spent spring break in Boulder, Colorado, because that's the place of craft beer, evidently. So these two young men are going to have a business making this machine so that individuals can serve craft beer at the right temperature. Now, that's not going to solve the big problems of the world, but it is going to meet a market demand. Well, my presentation today is titled Thinking Differently, the Hybrid Extension Educator of the Future. And really, maybe it's more about back to the future. Maybe it's lessons learned from old extension educators like myself. Just a quick reminder, I started in 1979 working with farmers out in the field. I was fresh out of K-State, had my bachelor's degree. But again, I really didn't know very much. But I worked with a group of farmers that helped me, and I worked with a group of fellow extension educators that wanted to help me be successful. And what I learned was a nice statement that when I sat down to talk to my colleagues about what I should talk about, a nice statement that Mike Ricalic said to me. And now I've taken it as my own. And the statement is that great extension educators make it look easy. And that is just simply the truth. So I got to work with some great extension educators, and they made it look easy. And so as we sat and talked about what I should share with you today, we thought, how would a set of extraordinary extension educators tell us what it means so that you can make it look easy? So that our students that are going to go into extension or go into business where they're going to be engaged in communication, how can we help them make it look easy? So I asked a few of my old colleagues a set of questions. What in their education or experience was necessary and essential to allow it to look easy? What would they say is essential or required for preparing extension specialists of the future? And what was the most important lesson that they learned in their work and what was the best piece of advice that they received that they took to heart that allowed them to be so successful. So again, I visited with Dr. Ritalik, I visited with John Lawrence, our Vice President for Extension at Iowa State. I visited with my Ag Communications Director. He's not mine anymore, the Ag Communications Director from the College of Ag and Life Sciences. We had a great conversation. But I went on then and talked to some other folks. And so here are some lessons that I want to share with you about what I learned on how you can make it look easy. And the first one was another statement from one of my colleagues. It's not about how much you can teach, it's about how much your students or your audience members learn. And you all know that because you're educators. You know that because you're in departments of ag education. But I have to tell you that your colleagues in agronomy and economics and animal science don't know that. And I'll never forget, one year my old major professor came to Iowa State and interviewed to be the vice president for extension. You know, he didn't get the job, primarily because he told all the department chairs in the college that they didn't know anything about adult education. That was a true statement. But they certainly didn't like hearing that from a candidate for the position. So there's an opportunity, I think, for ag education departments around the nation to work in different ways with their departments in colleges that are preparing individuals to work in the ag industry, whether it's in extension, again, or in industry, to help them understand what it might mean to think about the focus on learning, not the focus on delivery of technical competence. So again, being technically competent is not enough if you're going to be a good educator, whether it's in extension or any other environment. So going on to share more of my stories, one soon-to-be retired extension leader shared with me that he was a junior in high school when his father passed away. And he shared that the ag educator in his high school and that the county extension director in his home county literally saved his life because they cared about him, they were invested in him, and they helped him continue on with his life. And he came to Iowa State University to the Department of Ag Education and Studies, and he excelled in that department because he had mentors back home in the ag educator at the high school and in the county extension director. And he said he had a great education at Iowa State and in that department because the faculty cared about him and they supported him. And because he learned about a diverse set of disciplines. He didn't just learn about agronomy. He learned about how to communicate. He learned about psychology. He learned about sociology. So this diversified curriculum that you all offer in your departments are a big part of how individuals are successful in working in these positions, extension, or again, whether it might be in industry. He told me though that the most important lesson that he learned was that while extension education programs that we work hard on to deliver, really our curriculum, similar to what we deliver on campus to our students, while those were important, that even more importantly were the good ideas that came in the front door of his extension office. Because this individual started as an ag educator in a high school, but then became a county agent. So he said one day an influential individual in the county called him up and said, the county needs rural water. And as the county director, county extension director, you need to lead that effort. You need to get rural water for our county. And this individual told me he didn't even know what rural water was. But he started a process to make that happen. And it changed the lives of everybody in his county. And so his lesson was that some of the best ideas come in the front door of the office. And then you have to listen to hear what those ideas are. And that sometimes what needs to be done in the community is more important than perhaps what has been decided through a whole set of planning and development of curriculum. So You have to pay attention who's walking into the front door and what their ideas are and how they can really make a difference in the community that you're living in. Another colleague told me that you have to have 20/20 vision, that you have to be responsive on the frontline issues, the crisis of the day, and there are crises occurring all the time. This morning on the news, you could read about what's happening in Jeff City, Missouri with the tornadoes, or down in Adair, Iowa, earlier this week. So there's always a crisis that's occurring in a community where extension educators live, so you have to be aware of those, be ready to go, but you also have to be scanning the horizon for emerging issues. So you have to have 20/20 vision. Another individual shared with me that it's essential or required that you learn how to build relationships, establish trust, sit at the kitchen table, the city council table, the cooperative board table, and engage in a conversation. That you learn again to listen more than you talk. These are people skills that an extension educator must learn. They must either have or they must learn, and you can learn them. I knew all about what it took to build trust when I started in 1979. I was so proud of myself. I was going to host a corn borer twilight scouting meeting. Back then we had corn borers, we don't have them anymore. But back then we did. So I was going to host this event. We had a nice little turnout. It went really well. The county extension director told me at the end of the evening, well, that went well. If I'd known you were going to do such a good job, I would have advertised the program. So you have to build trust with everybody. They have to have confidence. You have to demonstrate your abilities, but you have to have a relationship with your colleagues and with those that you're working with. Another one of my colleagues told me, well, I might be a recent graduate from K-State and think I knew everything there was to know about corn borers, but I had to remember that not everybody wanted to know everything I knew. And that sometimes they had a better sense of what was going on than I did. And I had to be careful that when I sat down with them at their kitchen table, I didn't let the back door hit me in the butt as I walked out, because they were happy to have seen me go. So build those relationships, build those trusts. It's a required thing if you're going to make it look easy. Well, you often hear people compliment an extension director or extension specialist by saying that they really relate well to other people. But I believe what they're saying is that these are people who know how to tell a good story. And it's a story that has meaning to the people that they are speaking to. That these are individuals that can take an important idea, share real examples or situation, and through that build a relationship with who they're speaking to. Their words motivate people to do something, and through a story you can take a complex issue and share information in a way that everybody can understand. Some people say the ability to tell a story is a gift. Well, that's probably true, but I think you can also learn to tell stories. And at the end of the semester, one of Microtelex faculty, Virginia Hansen, sent me access to one of her side boxes, and in there were videos of her students and how she had taught them to tell stories. So I got to listen to her students tell stories about a whole set of different things. Virginia Hansen is telling her students how to tell stories, and as they go out in their lives, again, whether they're going to be involved in extension or some other aspect of working in the industry, wherever they're going to be, being able to tell a story will help them become a better leader in their community. At Iowa State University, we have a rock star in telling stories, Dr. Michael Dahlstrom in our Greenlee School of Journalism. And he's doing research on how you communicate science through stories. He says that stories have power. And so this idea of storytelling, I think that's something that has to be taught. I think it's a requirement for a good extension educator. Well, one of the final pieces of advice I got was good extension educators know that they can learn something from everyone. Whoever they're talking to, there's an opportunity to learn. And I think that's another requirement for a good extension educator. So just a quick summary on those points that I went through. A hybrid extension educator is one that is technically competent and more. They listen to others, they know how to build trust, they're great communicators, storytellers, they're engaged in current issues, but they know that they need to be watching the horizon for what's going to emerge, and finally, that you can learn something from everyone that you interact with. Well, how do we grow more what I call hybrid extension educators? Well, as part of the land-grant university system, where we work in both rural and urban counties, where we work with ag business, communities, international and nonprofits, I think we have to be thinking about growing these hybrid extension educators for all of those potential employment pathways. But at Iowa State, we're very concerned about the pipeline of extension educators in Iowa. And so Extension started a program called the Rising Star Internship Program. And so for years, county extension offices have had Iowa State students come and do an internship. They ran the county fair. They worked with 4-H on a set of curriculum that's being developed or delivered. But the Rising Star program is different. This is a program where students come to solve a community problem or to talk about how to develop an opportunity. And so they come in teams of 3 to a county, and they work on a specific challenge or opportunity. They are engaged with the county extension council. And what the council learns from this is a new set of perspectives. The students at Iowa State, believe me, no matter where they come from, rural or urban, Iowa, or any place in the world, they come with a different perspective than the folks sitting on the county extension council. And so it's important that that new perspective is heard. So that's one of the roles that they play. They also help that council understand a little bit about diversity. That it's time that rural America, it's time that agriculture understands that we have to be welcoming and inclusive of everyone. And that is not an easy message necessarily to have in any aspect of rural America. So they do a great job. And at the end of the summer, the interns give presentations to the deans where their colleges they're from, so whether it's ag or human sciences or whatever college. And what they hear most as a result of at the presentations, what they hear most is this: as a result of what I did this summer, I'm interested in a career in extension. And so that's one way to grow a pipeline. And they're not learning traditional extension, they're learning community engagement. They're learning about what it takes to build partnerships, to develop those relationships, to listen. They are not just a content specialist. So when I grew up in extension, I was just a technical expert. Nobody taught me all the things that some of my colleagues learned. But we have to have everybody be technically competent, but also have these people skills, these communication skills as well. Well, my second example of what I believe is possible is what I was able to look up and see on the web, that some of our land-grant universities are offering certificates in agricultural extension. And I wonder, what I can see was mostly for graduate students. But I wonder, as we think about agronomy and economics and animal science, how many of those students might be interested in seeing what it would be like to have this certificate that would help them have the skills to go with their technical competence. I think we have to do a better job of providing that opportunity to our colleagues in other departments. So those are 2 ways that I think we can perhaps grow a pipeline of individuals that are technically competent and more, that are the hybrid extension educators. And I think there's a real demand from students. You know the undergraduates at your institutions. They want to do something to help the world. At Iowa State, we have a major called Global Resource Systems. Those students want to go out in the world and make a difference. And so they need to be both technically competent as well as having these other skill sets as well. So back to my original comments about my goals at Iowa State University. Being welcoming and inclusive. Every day I talk to students at Iowa State University, and I almost always talk to them about what are they doing to welcome and be inclusive of students that don't look like them. At Iowa State, we are a primarily white institution. And so I tell our white students from rural Iowa that they should say hello to somebody that looks different than them. They should sit down by somebody on the bus that's wearing something different than they are wearing. They should invite somebody to be part of their team. We have to grow what happens in agriculture, and we have to grow everything in the United States by embracing diversity and what that brings, the creativity and opportunity that brings. Just a quick story, with the first president at Iowa State University, Adonijah Welch, stood up at his installation in 1869, and he said that Iowa State University would be open to everybody that wanted to come and was willing to work hard. And that meant irregardless of gender, race, socioeconomic status. And so in 1869, according to Adonijah Welch, we were only one of 4 universities that allowed women to study. So we need to build on this history that we all have in land-grant universities to welcome everybody. And agriculture has got to do it too. And then onto my second goal, innovation and entrepreneurship. This is something that all students can benefit from. In our programs in Ag Education Studies at Iowa State, that's one of the required courses is related to entrepreneurship. And I think that's something else that we should be thinking about as one of the skill sets for an extension, a hybrid extension educator, somebody that can make it look easy. Well, in summary, back to the future again. In 2002, I was on a task force that wrote the report, The Extension System, A Vision for the 21st Century. And there were a set of points that we made in this report, and I just want to remind you of what those were back in 2002. The first one was that there are new faces of America, and that was the conversation about diversity. This was 2002. The second one was globalization, and everything we're doing today just demands that we understand we're part of a global economy, a rapidly changing economy. The third was community vitality. Where you live, you have to help make that community be successful, and that means you establish a rural water system. You help lead that effort if that's what's required. You have to recognize that there are communities of interest and communities of place, and be engaged in all of those, whether rural or urban. The role of information technology, of course, look at how the changes have occurred there. And then the final summary point was that we have an uncertain future. And isn't that true for everybody? But we can make something great happen by being prepared to really have a set of individuals who are ready to go out and work, to be the hybrid extension educator of the future. Well, thank you so much for letting me share with you my thoughts, and I certainly, if there's time, would be happy to answer some questions.
Does anyone have some questions? Yes.
Early in your remarks, and thank you for those, by the way, I appreciate you being here. Early in your remarks, you referenced how agriculture education can have a role in helping others improve themselves as extension educators. The challenge we find is that we're expected to, if we're not teaching and generating more SCH and mentoring more grad students, we should be writing proposals to generate money coming in. And the activity of working with our peers in our colleges to improve their abilities to do what you say they need to do is not recognized, it's not rewarded, and it doesn't seem to be valued other than in remarks such as this. As president, how would you reshape a university to change that situation?
That's a great set of comments. And more importantly, as I sat down and worked on these remarks and sat with my colleagues and thought about extension, educator, it really said to me that it was probably one of my failings as a dean that I wasn't talking to my departments as a whole and what they were doing to address this opportunity, really. So that's probably a failing on my part as a dean. I think that the opportunity for us right now, though, and perhaps a conversation I can have with department chairs, is that we need to have universities that are more student-centric. What do the students need to be successful? We're all in processes all the time to look at how we reinvent the curricula. So how do we do that together? But I'm convinced that no longer is it enough to have somebody go out as an agronomist and maybe have taken a communication course in the English department. I don't think that's adequate anymore for the future. So it's a great, maybe what I'll do is I'll talk to the new dean of the College of Ag and Life Sciences. But I think it's a great question. In my world that I live in at Iowa State University, we have resource management model. And so colleges that teach more, they get more money. So there might be some opportunity because of that. But nonetheless, it's still an opportunity.
You mentioned RCM,
Yeah.
and a lot of our places have some form, shape, or function of that particular model. In a case where most undergraduate degrees are limited to 120 credit hours, you have the RCM model where units are rewarded for teaching courses in their departments. One of the things I could use some advice on is working with our colleagues across campus for like an extension. We have an extension minor. I like your idea of an extension certificate, but our agronomy brothers and sisters, animal science folks like to keep those credit hours in their department to be able to keep those, the generation in those areas. How can we do a better job of working with our colleagues across the college to show benefit to get some of those credit hours from the 124 an extension certificate or a minor to do that in kind of an RCM model?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's always about money. That is true. But again, I think there has to be a set of conversations back to this idea, what is best for the student? How do we best serve the student? They're our customer. How do we have students that are best prepared to go out and do the job that they're going to do? So I think having conversations that are very frank with each other, and maybe there's a way to do some trading, so to speak. Right now I have, I'm in conversations with faculty, and they feel so strongly about the need, it's not quite what we're talking about today, so strongly about the need to have a sociologist associated with the work they're doing, that they want to figure out how to get that funded in the department, not in the Department of Sociology, but they want it in their disciplinary department. So I think it's still sitting down and having conversations, and I know it's not easy, but I think it's worth doing because of the benefit of the student. I think that's where the conversation has to start. How can we be more student-centric? I'm gonna keep saying that. And if you're student-centric, then you have a better story to sell. You'll recruit more students. If you stay with old models, I think higher education is under so much stress, so much criticism, that if we stay the same, then I don't think we'll be the winners. Yes?
I love the ideas you shared. I'm thinking about the landscape of extension work today, and to me it seems incredibly complicated, and much more perhaps than it has been at any other time. So are there any of these tips that you think are more important today? We think about population, demographics, diversity, access, finances, policy, politics, all that. Are any of these more important, you think, today for an extension agent out in the community?
Actually, I do. I think it was one of the first that I shared, and that is the best ideas come in the front door of the county extension office. Because if you're not relevant locally, if you're not part of your community, if they don't see you as a trusted partner and leader, then they can decide not to fund you. So all politics are local. And the local elected council are the individuals that are talking to your state representatives or senators, and it's the same old story. When I'm out and about in the state right now, I'll go to the Sioux City County Extension Office. And it is a new world. So I hadn't been to the Sioux County Extension Office maybe for 20 years. And I walked in there, they're in a new facility. And why are they in a new facility? Because they had business and industry help pay for it. So it's not just departments that are fundraising, not just academic departments, but the Sioux City County Extension Office raised the money for a new facility. And on every wall, there's a thank you note to Cargill Solutions, So I think that's the big. If you're not listening to what's going on in your community, you will be irrelevant. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yes.
In an era of U.S. News and World Report rankings and other metrics like that, what would be your elevator speech on the core function of a land-grant university in today's society?
I don't think that the mission of the land-grant university has changed. We have 3 missions, and it's teaching, research, and extension. Now, connected to all those are things like economic development, back to community vitality, all sorts of things are laid under that. But if we walk away from our engagement with the state, then why should anyone really care? I talked to a legislator who said to me that an individual had been in his office talking to him about rankings, and rankings are important. Families and students look at rankings. There's no question they're important. And he goes, do you think we should fund you because of your ranking need, because you want to be better ranked? And my response was, no, you should fund me because of what we do to serve the state. And these are the ways that we serve Iowa. And at the end of that conversation, he said he liked my answer.
I did too.
As we think about the strategic goal number 1, which is talking about inclusiveness, I think that not only did you give all of us some wonderful things to think about, but I think she also gave us tools that each of us could use on a regular basis. I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Wintersteen. Not only is she a great model for us, but certainly as it relates to how we think we can go forward and implement what you've shared. Well, we'd like to thank you with a small token of appreciation. And as you think about the extension education, domestic and global SIG, we'd love to invite you in case you'd ever like to be involved with us. And as you think about that handout, it certainly would help us remember Dr. Wintersteen and have the time that we've spent together.
Thank you.